Right. And away we go. Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for joining us today for our very special Agile Welly February event. For those of you who are joining us from overseas, thank you for being up either super late or super early to join us. Agile Welly this year decided to be part of the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, and it is a global festival with over 600 events. And so we're super stoked that you've joined us today. Hey, just a quick reminder that we are recording today. So, and this will be shared with the Agile 20 Reflect Festival crew. So if you don't want your video to be seen, or your face or your profile, please feel free to turn your video off. Just another quick reminder that we do have a code of conduct as part of the Agile Reflect Festival. So it's basically requiring all of our event participants, whether speakers or attendees, to treat everyone with respect and kindness. And if you feel that that hasn't happened, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me or one of our other co-hosts. We'd be more than happy to take that feedback. So Agile 20 Reflect Festival has been put on by volunteers. There's a little bit more information on their website and also the link to their code of conduct if you'd like. We'll share the link to these slides after today. And what else can I tell you? I think that is basically the key stuff. So without further ado, I would love to hand over to Cheryl. And yeah, she will take us through the 3 A's of personal agility. Over to you, Cheryl.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte. Kia ora, thanks for inviting me in. When I speak, does that mean that I show up full screen for people? Is that, yeah, okay, cool.
On your setting.
Yeah, cool. Because I guess the reason I asked that is, the host has spotlighted your video for everyone. Nice one, thank you, Charlotte. The reason I say that is today I won't be using any slides, which is controversial perhaps, but I am going to be using the background function in Zoom to share some visuals. So it's a little bit of an experiment. I've used it a few times and I find it's a little bit, for me, it feels like a little bit easier way to engage. So hopefully if you can see my screen, then you'll be able to see anything that I'm going to present today. Just wanted to kick off, first of all, by saying thank you for being here. You know, our time is our most valuable thing that we have. And the fact that you are gifting some of your time today to come and listen to this and participate through it, not only tells me that you're an awesome person, but also that you are interested in this topic around personal agility. And just before we officially kicked off the call, there are a few of us on here, and kindly thank you to Matt, who I tested with him, you know, what is it that you're looking to get out of today? Because, you know, I'd really like to do my best to create the best experience for you guys to know exactly what it is that you would like to get out of today. So if you would like to, you're more than welcome to share in the chat channel. The chat channel really is for us for some dialogue today. So feel free to use that channel in any way you like, obviously being respectful and kind and considerate to others. But feel free if you want to put anything into the channel around what you'd like to get out of today. And I'm going to adapt and respond hopefully as we go. There might be some things I might go, we're not going to be able to cover that today because there's a short time and a lot of things. But thank you to Matt, who, you know, a couple of words that he'd shared was, I'm keen to connect, obviously with other people, get a bit of inspiration. And I loved what you shared, Matt, around connecting in my work life with my out of work life, I guess, and looking at how, you know, this personal agility concept, is this something that can actually apply in both worlds? So if you wish to, happy for you to just pop something into the chat. Thank you, Daryl. I love collecting as many different viewpoints and perspectives on how to apply agile mindset, values, principles, etc. as possible. So the more, the better. Awesome. These are, this session really is for you. And while I've got things to share and I've got some wonderful humans that are going to help contribute into this, the goal is that you all walk away. My hope is that you walk away with something you could do differently after leaving this call that is going to support you in your own personal agility. So that's my hope, is that you walk away with something. We're here for just an hour, so 6:15 New Zealand time is when we're going to aim to finish this all off. So like I said, we've got quite a lot to cover in that short time as well. Also learning what personal agility is about and how I can use it in my work and life. Awesome. We're definitely going to cover some of that. So to kick things off, kia ora tātou, ko Ruapehu te maunga. Ruapehu is my mountain. Ko Manawatu te awa. The Manawatu River is my river. No Raumati aho, I am from Raumati, which is on the west coast of New Zealand. Ko Cheryl toku whānau. Tansy is my family. And ko Cheryl toku ingoa. My name is Cheryl, and I'm sharing my pepeha, which is in Te Reo, which is the native language of New Zealand. And it's just an opportunity to share a little bit about myself, my mountain, my river, and also where I'm from and my family. So if you're interested, pepeha, if you Google search that, you can actually find one for yourself wherever you are in the world, and learn how to introduce yourself in Te Reo. For today, we are going to have another breakout room session, and just as we did with the first breakout room session, this is optional. So the purpose of it is to offer an opportunity for you to chat with other people and have a bit of a kōrero, a bit of a talk around what this personal agility concept is. But if you wish to, you can stay in the main room. That's not a problem. But we really do encourage, if you're open to it, have a chat to some other people. You never know who you might meet. And what conversation might spark out of that as well. We've also got a couple of special guests who have kindly offered their time to come in and talk about their experiences in personal agility. This is a couple of personal agility practitioners, and I'll be sharing a few concepts which I'm using now in an education program that I'm running to try and support more people to understand personal agility so they can figure out how it applies for their life. This is not in any way something that this is a hard and fast rule. These are practices and concepts that I've developed over many years that I've found incredibly valuable in my life, in the teams that I've coached and the organizations that I've worked with. And I would love to share more of this. So that's sort of my mission, my goal is to share that as well. Just checking in on notes coming through. Thank you, Charlotte, for putting the pepeha link there as well. Kia ora, Wayne. Awesome. Again, feel free to use that chat channel to conversate amongst the community today. Before we launch into things, I would like to offer everyone an opportunity to pause. So one of the most powerful things that I find in developing my own agility is pausing. And the pause, I like to refer to it as the power of pause. The power of pause allows us to respond rather than react. And depending on the day that you've had today, this may be the first time you've really paused. So I'd like to offer you an opportunity just to take a moment, do the thing that we do all day but aren't often conscious of it, which is take a really nice big breath in and out. Do a couple of cycles of that, and if you have an opportunity to place your feet on the ground of whatever surface, whether you're sitting or standing, and actually just really notice and observe the feeling under your feet. Now, you might have shoes on, or in my situation, I don't have any shoes on, so I can feel the carpet beneath my feet right now, but really being conscious of your feet. This is a really great practice, a really simple practice for just grounding us. And taking a couple more breaths. And I'd like you to, as if you're watching a movie, I'd like you to do a quick flick back through your day today. And so this is going to start with waking up. You know, observe what happened when you woke up this morning. Did you wake up on time? Late? Early? Was it an alarm? Did you naturally wake up? Did someone wake you up? Looking at the morning that you had, if you commuted to work, which in New Zealand with lockdown at the moment, not a huge number of people probably commuting, but the experience of your morning, perhaps you've got some kids in your household that are also not going to school today, and just looking at the day that you had, thinking about some of the events through the day. And when you look back over the day, was there anything today that didn't go to plan? Was there any moment that either didn't quite play out how you thought it would? Perhaps it was another individual you were interacting with. Perhaps it was a moment on your own. Perhaps it was something you thought was going to happen and it didn't happen the way that you expected it would. Looking at that one moment, imagine holding it in your hand and getting some perspective on it. Just taking a little look at that moment in terms of what happened. How did you respond in that moment? And if you could have that moment again, what might you do differently? And when you're ready to, coming back out of that moment, out of that film of your life, and if you need to take a note down of any actions to take after having that little process, feel free to. I find sometimes when we do that, that little visualization, people go, I really need to call so-and-so and apologize. Or I probably need to handle that differently next time. What we did there, as I'm sure if you are an Agile practitioner or someone who is aware of the Agile principles, was reflect on an experience, looking at our empirical data, and actually having a review of what happened and looking at how well we responded. It's like a little mini retrospective. And one of the beautiful things that happens when we take the time to pause and reflect is we have an opportunity to learn from it. And this is one really, really simple tool that can support your personal agility. So now we're here and we're present, we can feel our feet and we've reflected on our day. I'd like to share with you, as soon as I get my background sorted, when people say to me, what's personal agility? There are a lot of definitions, and I'm very fortunate to have had some great conversations with personal agility practitioners around the world. I'm chatting to a business in Amsterdam who they're doing some amazing work. I just had a chat with a woman in Melbourne yesterday who's also part of the Personal Agility Institute. This personal agility concept, it's not new and it's not one thing, but it is starting to build momentum, and there is starting to become an awareness around the importance of it when we're looking at organizational agility. Here I'm going to share with you my definition of personal agility and some of the ways in which I approach it when looking to develop it. So I'm going to step out the way. Does that work? There we go. Okay. Didn't actually practice this. If I keep my hand in there. Okay. Personal agility is the ability to easily and consciously respond to change in a direction of intention. It allows us to do more of what matters. Now, the key words that I really want to hone in on is the ability to easily and consciously respond to change in a direction of intention. Now, the easily and consciously part, you know, as we were just reflecting there around responding rather than reacting, and the direction of intention is another really key part that we're going to touch on shortly when we look into these 3 A's. So when I talk about the 3 A's of personal agility, this is a little tool and a model that I created to try and simplify what is a pretty big, gnarly concept. And just before we open up these breakout rooms again, I want to share this visual here. Organizational agility, team agility, and personal agility. And you might have seen this as part of the meetup. But this is, when we're looking at organizational agility, my belief is, from my experiences working with teams and organizations I've worked in about 7 different countries now with agile organizations, or organizations bringing agile in. Organizational agility does not sustain without the personal agility of the individuals. But before we dive further into that, I'd really love to open up the breakout rooms for those who are interested. We're going to take that question that this whole meetup is based on, is, can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? So that question, and that's the question that hopefully you've come into this meetup to discuss or think about or reflect with other people. I want to open up the meetup, the breakout room. So we're going to open them up for 6 minutes. Now, hopefully, Charlotte's going to support me in figuring out how we make sure everyone gets into a room. We don't leave anyone on their own without anyone else to talk to. But we're going to take that question in. Can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? So I believe if I hit breakout rooms, these are already set up from before. Is that right, Charlotte?
Yep, and we can set up some additional ones as needed, or we can create one final one for us.
Excellent.
Cool.
So with that question, can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? We're going to open the breakouts, 6 minutes to discuss it, and just have a chat with other people in the room. And like I say, always keep your mind open to something that someone else might be able to share with you. So we're going to open these rooms up. There we go. And feel free to jump in. If you're joining this call and not able to actually chat with others, you're welcome to stay in the main room, but we will close off this. I'll just stop the recording as well, and everyone can head into a room and see what comes up. Awesome. I realize we always have a sense that there's been good chat in the rooms when everyone stays in the room right till the end of the 60 seconds. And I realized that today we could keep that conversation going on and on. Hopefully you got to meet a couple of other people and, you know, keep connected after this and keep the conversation going. But for the purpose of trying to get through everything, and feel free, again, use that chat channel for dialogue. If anything came up in your group in terms of, can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? If anything came up that was quite interesting in your group, feel free to throw it in there. I love the debate around this because, and again, I can only share my perspective, but that was always one of the biggest challenges that I found as an agile coach in an organization, were the teams that I was working with and the leaders that I was working with in those teams were asking for agile in terms of, we want to be able to respond quickly to change, but the people within the organization and within the teams hadn't had an opportunity to perhaps develop their own response to change, yet they were being given practices that was trying to create that ability for them to respond better to change, but there was some internal stuff happening for them. And so this I found over and over again. I started to couple a lot of my leadership life coaching tools with the agile tools and bringing these two together. And what I think is really amazing is that if you are using agile tools, and I say tools in terms of frameworks, roles, practices, things that you're using to try and create agility within your teams and your organization, so many of these practices you can transfer over into your day-to-day life. And this is really where we're starting to find momentum happening for people when they start to live this stuff every day. And often people say to me, I can't believe you actually have post-it notes everywhere. Like right now I'm in my office, which has become a spare bedroom, but this is me preparing for today. I don't use post-it notes just because I'm trying to keep 3M in business. I use them because it's a way that I learned to process information, to prioritize things that I needed to do, to break down the work, to determine where the most value is. There's a number of post-it notes I didn't get to today, but it's cool because they weren't the most valuable ones. The most valuable ones are sitting in my done column. There's a couple still sitting there that I wish I had got to, but I knew that if I could prioritize them, I could make the most of the time that I had. And so the practices we use with teams, when we start using them in our day-to-day life, we start to see that show up. And as leaders of agile teams, this starts to show up. And I always remember a really interesting conversation with a leader once where he said, I cannot understand why my team will not use sprint goals. He said, we get into the sprint planning session and no one wants to set goals for our sprint. And I said, okay, cool. So how are you helping the team to set these goals? And he said, well, I tell them what to do and I tell them how they should look. Oh, cool. So what goals do you have personally for this sprint? And he goes, I mean, I've got a big list of things I've got to do. Yeah. So do you have any goals for the sprint yourself? Because, well, and I don't really have time to set the goals. I've just got to get these things done. And you could see in that moment as it was coming out of his mouth, he went, okay, I see. Okay, all right. So maybe if I start showing up and telling the team, these are my goals for the week, for the sprint, whatever your duration is. What about you? What have you got set up? So when we can start to use the same practices ourselves that we're asking our teams and our people to use, there's legitimacy and there's realness that comes with it. And, you know, if a team turns around to you and says, so you want us to set sprint goals and you don't have any, are you sure they're valuable? You know, it's really hard to stand on that and say, yeah, they are really valuable. I just don't have time to do them, but I need you to do them. So looking at a lot of those practices that we ask of our teams, if we can start to use them. So I'm now going to dive into the 3 A's because I do want to share, like I said, one really simple approach that I've found really helpful and valuable. And we're very shortly going to chat to a couple of other people that I've been fortunate to be working with lately that have been using these 3 A's as well. I'm again going to use this. Oh, yes, it's working. So the 3 A's that I look at, and it lines into that definition that I gave at the beginning around personal agility is the ability to easily and consciously respond to change in a direction of intention. So the 3 A's are align, anticipate, and adapt. And there is a huge amount of stuff that fits in within each of these, but this helps my brain to do a quick check on a regular basis around where these 3 are at for myself. So when we're talking about align, we're talking about vision. We're talking about goals. When it comes to, as a coach, one of the things I'm often helping people to work out is, where are you trying to get to? What are your goals? What is the vision for the future? As an individual, what is your purpose? You know, one of the tools that we use in the personal agility program is Ikigai. Now, Ikigai has been around for a very long time. It's an amazing concept developed in Japan. And it's all around finding this beautiful magic spot of what you're good at to what the world needs, around what you're passionate about. And the goal with alignment is making sure, do we know where we're going? Because as you'll know from working with agile teams and organizations, without a vision and a clear North Star, it makes it very hard to make decisions on a rapid basis if you don't have a collective way forward. And as an individual, it becomes very challenging when you get many things pop up in your world, many competing priorities. How do you know which ones to say yes to if you're not clear on where you're going? So the align is one part of it. Anticipate. This is probably it's probably the A that is less utilized, but the most valuable. So once you've aligned into what it is you want to go after, and the adapt part starts to become a little more self-explanatory, that's the part to actually respond. Anticipating is, what are the practices that you have in place to prepare for the change before it occurs? So it's one thing to be able to respond to change and adapt. So when change comes in and you've got to make a call and you've got to prioritize and you've got to change your mind, or your decision might be to keep going in the direction you're going. And I love the concept around it. It's almost like when you're training for something, you're developing the strength and the practices and the resilience. So when the change hits, you're actually prepared and you have ways in which you can respond to it. And then adapt is all around how we sustainably continue to respond to the change. So I'm going to just share one more version of this 3 A's, but on a little bit more detail. And I think if I hit, here we go. So really briefly there, I've got just the 6 main modules that we cover. And I just want to share a little bit on this. So human-centered analysis and value-centered visioning. Now, these are when we're looking at alignment and aligning into our vision. We want to know human-centered analysis, and it's the classic starting question from your coach. Where are you at now? Where are you at right now? If you were to measure these 3 A's, how aligned are you to your vision and your purpose? What practices do you have in place to anticipate the change? And how easily do you currently respond to change? So when we're looking at human-centered analysis, as a human, we're observing where you're at, we're not judging. Then when we're looking at vision, we want to make sure that our vision is centered in our values. And this, another really amazing part, one of my favorite parts when we did the last program was for people to try and figure out what their values are and give them terms and names and be able to live into them whenever they're setting their goals, so that you've got something you can compare it to. You can go, this is my goal. Does this actually fulfill some of my values? Or am I chasing a goal that's really not going to mean much when I achieve it? So within the anticipate phase, we're looking at future state design. So once we hopefully get a bit more of a grounding around our vision and our purpose, how do we integrate that in to generate a path forward to get us there, or at least a first version of that path? So creating a baseline plan that we know is going to change as we go. Also with anticipate, our 4th module is called transparent navigation. So once we start to create this plan and looking at what is sitting in that backlog, how do we decide what we'll do next? And then once we do that, how will we decide what we'll do next? And how do we keep this really transparent so that every time we're making new decisions, we can see the things that are our options and we know how to make those decisions moving forward. When we look at the 3rd A, adapt, we're looking at conscious prioritization. So this leans into consciously responding. It's so easy for us to say, there's a big new shiny thing that's appeared and I want to chase. I'm going to go spend some time doing that. I often call them the rabbit holes that I fall down if I'm not careful. Oh, that looks like something interesting to research. And then I lose 4 hours of my day that I really had to get something done. Being conscious when we're prioritizing. And sometimes it might be, I'm going to consciously go down this rabbit hole and I know it, but I want to do that today. So just being conscious when we're responding. And then the last one is around sustainable agility. And for those of you that are feeling a little tired, and we're pretty new into 2021 at the moment, but it may be that we are being asked to work at a pace that doesn't feel sustainable. And certainly in a lot of the agile teams that I've worked with, one of the primary goals was of speed. We think, we've heard this agile thing makes everyone go faster. Sprinting can be quite a dangerous term, I've found, because what we know is it's not possible to sprint forever. We need to have downtime, we need to have regeneration, we need to watch people's energy levels as we're going at a really high intensity. So making sure that the practices that we have for ourselves are sustainable to try our best to avoid any kind of burnout. So I will share some links after this as well, which has got more information around these. I've also got a link on my website, which has got some of the learning outcomes that we work on with these. Again, just in case they're of value or of interest around the different things that we focus in on. And with these 3 A's, what we've found is it means you may one day have a really high alignment. You might go, I'm really clear on my vision and my purpose and my goal, and I know what I'm about. And then life can radically change overnight. For those of us who went through lockdown in New Zealand was it March last year? For me personally, all of my work was in person. And when you go through a 4-week lockdown where you're not allowed to see other people, that cancelled all of my work. So my vision that I had to rapidly change. So all of a sudden, my alignment dropped massively. And the concept with these 3 A's is how do we support each of them, that we're giving each of them a bit of love, because we know if we're not very well aligned to what we're doing, our ability to adapt is going to drop. If we are adapting really, really fast, but we're actually not putting in sustainable practices around it, we'll burn out. So there's implications of each of these being low. And the goal is to understand each of them and be giving each of them a bit of love as well. So now that I've shared a little bit around the 3 A's, I'd like to share some of the talking and introduce a couple of people who have been really fantastic supporters and teachers for me. In running an education program, I'm supposed to be the teacher, but I find that when I'm running these programs, I learn so much from people and seeing how they actually take this information and apply it for themselves. And so I'm really, really honoured to have Wayne and Kylie joining us today, who were they were in the personal practitioner program last year, and have, like I said, been really, really incredible humans to teach me how they take this stuff and how they've used it for themselves. So I'd like to introduce first of all Kylie. Kylie, are you? I'm looking around in my Hey, awesome. Charlotte, can we unpin me so then the speaker pops up?
Sure can.
Is that possible? Yeah, awesome. Kylie, do you know, I was checking out, I thought, I actually don't know your work history, and I went through and I was just looking at some of the roles that you've been doing over the last few years. You were a business transformation consultant at Hewlett-Packard, business change manager at FMG. At Chorus, you were doing business intelligence operations manager, GM of business transformation at the Medical Assurance Society, and now you're head of membership services at the Royal New Zealand College of General Practitioners. So what I know about you is you care deeply for people. And you've been part of a number of different transformations. And when we got to connect through the program last year, you were in a transition from one role to another. Yep. And I just loved that while you never picked for those moments to happen, to sit in that space between roles, it does offer a really amazing opportunity to refocus on what's important. And just wanted to get sort of some thoughts from you. And I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask the question, and if it's okay, I'll get you and Wayne to both share your thoughts as well. So I'll put the questions very shortly. I'll just quickly whip over now to Wayne Kingy, who's calling in from Auckland with a wonderful post-it note background going on. Kia ora, Wayne.
Kia ora. Ko Mitani te Maunga, ko te ao ngā rangatira, te awa. So my ancestral mountain is Rangitane, right at the top of the north. My river is the River of Chiefs and Kirikiri Inlets. Ko Ngāpuhi te iwi, ko te wai marama te marae. From the Ngāpuhi tribe, my marae is Waimarama, also in Kirikiri. Ko Wayne Manga Kingi, te rangaihi tōku ingoa. That's my full name. Kia ora, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Kia ora, Wayne. Kia ora. Thank you for bringing your full self. Wayne, I got to first connect with you at Westpac, where you've been an Agile coach and actually almost 20 years at Westpac.
Guilty as charged, yes.
Yeah. You know, I was doing a little bit of background search on you, kind of started in the test analyst space, moving into technical manager, which I think is a really beautiful transition then into Agile coach. And I've been really fortunate to get to work closely with you. And then on this program, got to see you grow through figuring out more about what really brings you to life as well.
100%. You know, I'm guilty of a bit of propaganda in my background. That's actually the aligned dimension on my back wall to remind me about what's important in my life and to keep me aligned with my decision making. So that's not by accident. That's something that's become super important to me, that I look at every day and make sure that I'm working on what's most meaningful in my life. It's only taken, 10, 15 years to get to this point, actually putting Agile practices into practice. But yeah, the personal agility course was instrumental in enabling me to do that.
And that line there, putting agile practices into practice. And it's spot on. I'm seeing a few nods going on right now. Putting agile practices into practice. So can I throw a question to Kylie and to Wayne around, those 3 A's? Just curious around which one do you feel has been most valuable for your growth personally? And Kylie, if you want to share with us.
Oh, kia ora koutou. For me, and Cheryl, you talked a little bit about the space that I was in when I did the course. I just happened to see I guess a link to the course from Agile Pete. And yeah, it was the universe telling me that, I should consider doing this. So, because I was just coming out of one job and trying to work out what I wanted to do. So I guess that direction of intention was what I was seeking. And so for me, it was the align portion of the course that resonated most strongly for me at that time. I think with all learning experiences, different aspects will probably land differently depending on where you happen to be in your life journey. So for me, it was definitely the align. I had done a number of exercises previously around core values, but I think on reflection, I hadn't either, full disclosure, taken those seriously, or just hadn't really, I guess, taken that forward, taken those forward. So I really tried hard to think seriously about my values. And I think I wasn't alone in having them, in going through a few iterations of that over the course. There are a few of us who went, actually, I've changed my mind about what's really important to me. But that formed the basis for my the job hunting that I was doing at that time, which it had never done before, which is a little bit shameful when you're getting further on in your career, that you've kind of just meandered around. So yeah, so for me it was that. If I was to do the course now, it would probably be different, I think, but yeah, that's what resonated for me. So
awesome. And because I think what I'm hearing there as well, and we've talked about, is we keep evolving, right? So of course our values, while they're core values, what we call them and how they show up and what becomes important at different times can change. Yeah. Kia ora, thank you. And Wayne, how about for you? Which of the A's has landed?
So like Kylie was saying, it evolves. So align straight out of the course was super important to me. And then anticipate became a thing. I realized what an art it is to turn ideas like a vision, a mission, a purpose, and break it down into a concrete backlog that you can then take action on and experience the concrete, tangible results. So I went through a period where anticipate was super important for me. I call it my pizza phase, how to chop up a pizza and consume it bite by bite. But at the moment, it's actually the adapt phase that's really resonating for me. I've called it my two focuses at this phase is disciplined decision making and disciplined doing. So it's the discipline piece of putting your feet to the ground, getting up there and actually running, aligning to your goal of, say, losing weight or getting fit, getting faster. Adapt is, you need a line to ensure that you're doing the right thing. You need anticipate so you know what to do. But it's having the discipline to do it and the discipline to explore your thinking so you're making the right decisions. That's the thing I'm working with at the moment.
Yeah, awesome. And I love, Wayne, that you share around that discipline. And again, if we look at those putting agile practices into practice, how often do we ask our teams to have that discipline, right? Show up to your retro, stay committed to your goals and not get distracted by other things. But when we start doing it ourselves, we're reminded that as humans, it's a challenge sometimes to keep that discipline. So yeah,
100%.
awesome. I'm gonna throw the two questions together for Kylie and Wayne. How has this helped you in your work, which you kind of covered a little bit, but yeah, anything just to share on how this has sort of showed up for you in your work, and what sort of one practice that you would maybe recommend to others who are wanting to work on their own personal agility. Kylie, if you want to kick us off.
Yes. You told me in advance what this question was going to be, and so I did have to give some reflection as to how I've been applying it at work. And what I've realized is that it has been largely around people management for me. So I don't manage an agile team. I manage 4 different, completely separate disciplined teams in my space. So really there's probably 2 bits that we're doing. One is using the visual navigation tools to help kind of unpack some of the big, hairy challenges that we have at the moment. And also on a one-to-one level, I've definitely used the Ikigai model with people to help them to explore what do they like about their role, what they don't like about their role, what are they passionate about. So, and that kind of triggers, I guess, bigger thoughts about things outside of work, really. So on the basis of you dealing with the whole person. So those tools, having those tools in the toolbox to be able to whip out and go, oh, here's a framework that we can use to have different discussions, not just work discussions, but actually, professional development discussions. That's been great. The one practice that I definitely recommend is considering, so there's this concept of the personal agility tank, and what are the things that fuel your agility and what are those things that drain you? And it might be people, not just things or activities or times. And I hadn't really considered that prior to the course. And now I go into each day and go, have I got a discussion with someone that might lead to me feeling a little bit more drained? How do I want to prepare for that? So just being a bit more reflective and conscious. It's that thinking about how you're going to respond as opposed to react. If you anticipate, I guess, what's coming at you during the day, which seems really logical to do, but doesn't always happen if you're really busy and time poor and you're just trying to get from one thing to another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Kylie. And I just put the word Ikigai in the chat channel as well, if anyone wants to do a little search afterwards. It's a really beautiful practice to test on yourself. And Wayne, do you want to finish off? So in terms of how's it sort of showing up in work, and any practice that you might recommend for others?
Yeah, so at work, especially when I'm working with a new team, working with them to define their vision, mission, purpose, and values, and using, I guess, that visibility as a lens for them to then make concrete decisions. So how do we know that we're doing the right thing? Well, let's revisit our mission, purpose, vision, or values. How do we know what a priority is? Well, which of these work items is going to get us quicker to our vision or is aligned with our vision? And I've kind of come up with a decision making framework that I'm experimenting with teams and some life coaching students as well. And it seems to be working a treat, just a simple way to explore, what do you need to do versus what do you have to do? What do you want to do? What do you get to do? Is it aligned? Is it not aligned? And it seems to help people get over that hump of making an actual decision, and try getting people to not to think about it too much. Let's actually be empirical about our practice and learn by doing rather than just overanalyzing things. So that's working quite well at work. what would I recommend as a takeaway from me was the hidden dimension. So you mentioned the 3 A's and the hidden dimension of sustainability. I've been practicing the power of pause every day, even though my life has gotten busier because I'm actually putting a lot of action in my life. And without it, I couldn't sustain the level of action I'm using at the moment. So sustainability is a big thing. Well-being was the overall utopia, dream, horizon view that I was going for, which is at the top of the hierarchy in the background. And sustainability is essential to well-being.
Awesome. Kia ora, Wayne. Thank you for sharing. And it's very fulfilling for me when I get to share some concepts, and then when I love when people take them and then use them however works for them. And I'm sure that any of us that have worked with any frameworks in Agile, whether you've used Scrum, Lean, Kanban, you take these fantastic concepts and frameworks and then you figure out how to make them work for you. And this is one of the really amazing things around your personal agility is so many of the tools that you use with your team, you can bring them into your life. And I guess that would be kind of one suggestion or thought for you is, where in your work, if you looked at some of the practices maybe that are working well in your team or your organization, and some that aren't, looking at how much they're showing up in your own life. And is there a way in which you could maybe bring some of those in and test them out with yourself? Because the moment you start doing that, I can almost guarantee that people around you will start to notice. And if you're in a leadership role or an influential role, you'll start to see people also following that same lead as well. So kia ora, Wayne, kia ora, Kylie, thank you for sharing those, mixing up the speaking a little bit and sharing some real stories. I felt that may be of value to people to just hear some other stories, and I'm sure Wayne and Kylie, if anyone wants to connect with you guys, I'm probably on LinkedIn, they could just connect in. Awesome, cool. And also we're all part of the Agile Welly community, so I'm sure they'll be back in these sessions as well. We've got a couple of minutes left to go, so I'm about to hand it back to Charlotte to close things out. I'm going to pop a link into the chat channel, and we'll also put all of these links into the meetup app as well, in case anyone loses it. I've just, one of my post-it notes today was to load a PDF onto my website, which is the personal agility scan. So it takes the 3 A's, and it's the question for each of the A's. So an opportunity for you to kind of give yourself a score 0 to 5, where you're at on each of those 3 A's based on those 3 questions. And again, can I encourage you to observe your response, not judge your response. Don't be hard on yourself. If you go, I don't know what my values are, I don't know what my purpose is, oh no, those guys sounded like they had it together. Wayne and we spent 6 weeks just in the program itself hashing out those values over and over again, and like they said, we're still hashing them out. This is potentially life work that we're doing here. So try not to be too hard on yourself if your scores are low in those areas. All it does is it gives you some insight into where you might want to focus a bit of energy and attention. So that's just a little tool that you're welcome to use. I also find it can be valuable. You can ask the same questions of your team and your organization. So when we look at those 3 circles, they're questions you can ask yourself on team agility in terms of how aligned are we? What are our anticipative practices that we've got in place? How well do we adapt? And you can actually ask them at those 3 levels as well. All right, I think I'm done. I'm going to hand it back to Charlotte. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of today. And like I said, we'll share some links. One last thought is I've just set up a meetup for an HR specific version of this talk, to go down the same route, but looking at it from an HR point of view, so trying to roll this out organizational wide. I'll put a link to that as well into the meetup app if anyone wants to come in a few weeks.
Fabulous. Whoa, drop the mic. She's out. Hey,
Good.
Cheryl. Amazing. Thank you so much for your mahi. Also to Kylie and Wayne for giving up some of your experiences and talking to us about, how you've found things. Things that I've heard today are around align, anticipate, adapt, discipline and decision making and doing, but also how do we respond and react. I've definitely got heaps of takeaways from today, and I hope that our attendees have as well. Big thank you to joining the call from across the globe as part of the Agile 20 Festival, Reflect Festival. We appreciated you being here. We've got a couple of, we've just got a couple of little questions. I know, Cheryl, you've got a couple of little minutes up your sleeve, but if people want to stick around to hear these questions, you're more than welcome, but we will stop the recording now. But thanks again for being with us. Any feedback or comments, please come through the Meetup channel. We'll respond to comments there. Feel free to reach out to Cheryl through LinkedIn. We'll also be having another Meetup, which will be a remote one next month as well. So keep a lookout on our Agile Welly page for more information on that. It's one not to be missed. So thanks again, Cheryl. I appreciate your time.
Oh man, it's awesome.